Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Please consider subscribing and check out our Patreon for more. Enjoy the video. Paparazzi! Shoving and elbowing each other in an attempt to get the best shot, they surged across the threshold like a tidal wave, driving Michelle back against the sink. The shouts and strobes were blinding, disorienting, a sensory assault that had her cowering and throwing up a hand to shield her face. Michelle, over here! Is it true you've gained 15 pounds for your upcoming role? Who was that hunk you were spotted canoodling with last night? What do you have to say about the rumors of your drug addiction? The questions pelted her like hail, vicious and stinging. Michelle shook her head frantically, words sticking in her suddenly parched throat. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. They were supposed to worship her, not accost her when she was at her most vulnerable. And then the unkindest cut of all, voiced by a Weasley man elbowing his way to the front. Yeesh, looks like someone needs to fire her esthetician. Get a load of that train wreck mug. A fresh round of laughter and flashes exploded as the photographers jockeyed to capture Michelle's mascara-streaked cheeks and livid, red-splotched complexion. Her hands fluttered helplessly, trying to simultaneously cover her face and the traitorous bits of mask still clinging to her jaw. So much for her new identity as a flawless beauty. She should have realized it was all smoke and mirrors, unattainable illusions. No mortal woman could withstand this level of scrutiny, this merciless dissection of her every pore and pimple. "Please," she croaked, hating the pathetic wobble in her voice. "Please, just leave me alone." But the pitiless tide kept coming, backing her into the corner as they feasted on her humiliation. Michelle closed her eyes against the brutal onslaught, hot tears leaking from beneath her lashes. This was why she had never chased fame and fortune back in her previous life. The price was just too high. No amount of money or adoration was worth this dehumanizing fishbowl existence, this complete and utter annihilation of privacy and control. "Get out," she whispered, voice gaining strength. "Get out! Get out! Get out!" On the last shout, Michelle's eyes flew open and she lunged forward, shoving through the crowd with surprising force. Cameras went flying, reporters stumbling into each other like dominoes. For a moment, shock held them immobile, long enough for Michelle to bulldoze her way to the door and wrench it open with a splintering crack. "And don't come back!" she snarled, chest heaving as she glared at the stunned paparazzi. "I'm done being your punching bag. Go pick on Lindsay Lohan if you're so hard up for gossip." The reference sailed right over their heads, but the pure venom in her voice was enough to send them scattering. In the space of a few seconds, the penthouse was empty again. No sign of the invasion except a few muddy footprints on the plush carpet. Trembling from head to toe, Michelle stalked to the bathroom and fiercely twisted the taps on the enormous jet tub. She needed to get clean, to wash away the stench of exploitation and shame. The designer dress went flying, along with the scraps of beauty mask. Submerging herself in the steaming, fragrant water, Michelle let her breath out in a long, shuddery sigh. That was not an experience she ever cared to repeat again. This face, this body, they were the keys to a very exclusive club. But they came with their own set of chains, too. Blindly groping for a washcloth, Michelle scrubbed herself raw, not stopping until every inch of skin was pink and tingling. She wanted zero traces of that awful green goop or those even more awful paps. Only then, pruny and ridiculous with her chignon a damp tangle, did she allow herself to relax fractionally. She sank deeper into the water, letting it lap gently at her chin as her mind wandered. The agent, the stylist, the film. All of it felt like some bizarre fever dream now. She didn't feel glitzy or glamorous. She felt hungover and heartsick, a lost little girl playing dress-up. What was the point of having this gorgeous exterior if people only wanted to defile and exploit it? What good was a pretty face if it made you a target for cruelty and objectification? Where was the Prince Charming to rescue her from this waking nightmare? Michelle snorted derisively, the sound echoing off the marble. Prince Charming didn't exist. Not for the weepy damsels, and certainly not for brassy broads like herself. Fairy tales were just that, tales. comforting fictions to get little girls through long, hard lives where happy endings were scarce. The reality was, she was on her own in this mess. No one was coming to save her, not a knight in shining armor and not a wisecracking sidekick. If Michelle wanted off this nauseating roller coaster ride through Celebville, she was going to have to orchestrate her own exit. Nodding grimly to herself, Michelle rose from the tub like a bedraggled Venus, water sluicing off her curves. First things first, she needed a disguise, something to shield her from prying eyes and grasping hands while she figured out a game plan. She rifled through the racks of slinky slip dresses and plunging halters until she found what she was looking for, an oversized hoodie and a pair of baggy drawstring pants. They were an eye-searingly bright floral print, some designer's idea of athleisure, but they would do. Yanking them on, she twisted her damp hair into a messy topknot and surveyed herself in the mirror. It wasn't much of a disguise, but the voluminous clothes at least downplayed her pneumatic figure and famous face. She could almost pass for a civilian, albeit a very attractive one. Next, she needed cash and lots of it. If there was one thing her old life as Mike had taught her, it was the power of cold, hard currency. Cash didn't leave a trail, didn't trigger alerts. It was the great equalizer, the skeleton key. Michelle ransacked the penthouse methodically, upending couch cushions and emptying drawers until she'd amassed a decent-sized pile of bills. Her agent probably kept the bulk of Michelle's earnings, but there was enough petty cash lying around to fund a moderately comfortable escape. Now for the tricky part, getting out of this gilded cage without attracting notice. The doorman and concierge were sure to recognize her, even in this makeshift disguise. And the streets would be crawling with paps after that little stunt. Michelle bit her lip, thinking hard. Then, spying a sleek black motorcycle helmet on a shelf, she grinned. Of course, what better way to travel incognito than on 2 wheels? She vaguely recalled Mike having a motorcycle license, though he'd rarely used it. Motorcycles were pricey, and parking in the city was a nightmare. But for once, Michelle's alter ego's expensive tastes were going to work in her favor. Grabbing the helmet, a set of keys, and a pair of oversized sunglasses, Michelle paused at the door to take one last look around the lavish apartment. It seemed a shame to abandon all this luxury, but the price was just too high. Better to be free and broke than trapped in a velvet cage. Thanks for the memories, she muttered, blowing a sardonic kiss. Then, taking a deep breath, she stepped out into the hallway and shut the door firmly behind her. The elevator ride down to the garage level was mercifully empty, the plush carpeting muffling the nervous tapping of her designer sneakers. When the doors opened, Michelle peered out cautiously, making sure the coast was clear before venturing into the underground labyrinth. The rows of sleek sports cars and luxury SUVs gleamed under the fluorescent lights, a testament to the building's wealthy residents. Michelle scanned the sea of vehicles, looking for one that matched her key fob. A candy apple red Vespa caught her eye, and she grinned, imagining the envious looks she'd get zipping through traffic on that little number. She was halfway to the scooter when a voice rang out, freezing her in her tracks. "Going somewhere, Michelle?" Heart plummeting, Michelle turned slowly to see her agent standing a few feet away, arms crossed and foot tapping ominously. Even in the dingy garage lighting, the woman looked formidable, her severe black suit and sharply angled bob radiating authority. "I was just..." Michelle trailed off, mind racing for a plausible excuse. A joyride? An impromptu coffee run? Somehow she didn't think her hard-nosed agent would buy either story. "Just trying to sneak off and leave your entire career in shambles?" the agent finished acidly, stalking closer. Her high heels clicked like gunshots on the concrete. "I saw the footage of your little meltdown. Gotta say, not your best look." Michelle cringed, suddenly feeling very small and shabby in her makeshift disguise. So much for a clean getaway. She should have known better than to underestimate this shark in Louboutins. "It's not what it looks like," she tried weakly, edging towards the Vespa. If she could just get on the bike, maybe she could still outrun this PR nightmare. "I just needed some air, some space." What you need is a reality check, the agent snapped, snatching the helmet out of Michelle's hands. You're not in Kansas anymore, Dorothy. You're a public figure now, with obligations and expectations. You can't just go off the grid whenever things get a little rough. Michelle bristled at the patronizing tone, straightening her spine. Oh, so I'm just supposed to smile and take it while those vultures dissect me like a frog in biology class? I'm a human being, not a piece of meat. You're a commodity, her agent corrected bluntly. A very valuable one at the moment, which means your time and image are no longer solely your own. That's the price of fame, sweetheart. You want to be a star? Then get used to living in a fishbowl. It was like a bucket of ice water had been dumped over Michelle's head, shocking her system. The agent was right. This was the devil's bargain she'd inadvertently signed, the fine print of the fairy tale wish fulfillment. Even with a fairy godmother's aid, happily ever afters didn't come for free. Shoulders slumping, Michelle let her agent tow her back to the elevator, not even protesting when the woman jabbed the penthouse button. She felt utterly defeated, all the fight drained out of her. She'd been unbelievably naive to think she could just opt out of this glamorous new existence when it got inconvenient or overwhelming. Running away wasn't an option. Whatever twisted magic had landed her in this body, in this life, she was stuck with it now. The trip back up to the top floor passed in a daze, Michelle barely noticing when they arrived at her door. She shuffled inside woodenly, wincing at the mess the paparazzi had left in their wake. Her agent swept in behind her, already barking orders into her cell phone. Get a cleaning crew here ASAP, and security to do a full sweep of the building. And I want the name of every single one of those bottom feeders who barged in. They'll be getting a cease and desist from our legal team before the day is out. The clipped efficiency was oddly soothing, and Michelle found herself sinking onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. What a day! What a bizarre, bewildering, topsy-turvy day. Was it only this morning that she'd woken up as a whole new person? It felt like a lifetime ago now. Her agent finished her call and perched gingerly on the edge of a vintage slipper chair, giving Michelle an inscrutable look. Michelle braced herself for another lecture, but the woman's face gradually softened. Look, I know this isn't easy, she said, voice uncharacteristically gentle. The spotlight can be intense, especially when you're not used to it. But you have to trust that I have your best interests at heart. You hired me to look out for you, to build and protect your brand. Let me do my job. Michelle swallowed around the lump in her throat, oddly touched. It was the closest thing to maternal concern she was likely to get from her Type A agent. Okay, she agreed quietly. I'm sorry for causing such a scene. I just panicked. I'm not really sure how to handle any of this yet. The agent nodded briskly, already back in business mode. Well, lucky for us, image rehab is my specialty. We can spin this little incident to our advantage, paint you as the wounded ingenue, hounded by the ruthless media. The public loves an underdog. We'll have them eating out of your hand by the end of the week. Michelle blinked, impressed by the woman's calculated approach despite herself. It was a bit chilling how quickly she could turn a humiliating debacle into a carefully crafted narrative. Still, if anyone could make this mess go away, it was her pit bull publicist. And right now, Michelle would take all the help she could get. She was in way over her head with this celebrity stuff. I'll let you get cleaned up. The agent stood, smoothing invisible creases from her pencil skirt. The Vanity Fair team will be here at 7 a.m. sharp. I expect you to be ready and waiting with a smile. Michelle nodded meekly, already dreading the early call time and the prospect of being poked and prodded by a horde of strangers. But she knew better than to argue at this point. The door clicked shut behind her agent, and Michelle slumped back against the cushions, closing her eyes. What she wouldn't give for a reset button, a chance to go back to her old, boring, decidedly unglamorous life. But that life was lost to her now, as lost as her male body and identity. For better or worse, she was stuck in this new reality. A throat cleared, startling her upright. Michelle's eyes flew open to see an all-too-familiar figure lounging on the opposite end of the sofa, grinning at her. You! Michelle gasped, jabbing an accusing finger at the genie. You did this to me! Turn me back right now! The genie held up his hands in a placating gesture. Hey, I just granted your wish. No backseas, remember? Even we phenomenal cosmic beings have some rules. Michelle glared at him, hoping lamps and cats weren't the only things she'd inherited from her predecessor. I didn't wish for any of this. The princess treatment, the rabid fans, the total lack of privacy or control over my own life. This is a nightmare, not a fairy tale. The genie clucked his tongue, unperturbed by her dramatics. Oh, come on! It's not all bad. You get to be beautiful and famous and wear fabulous designer clothes. Do you know how many people would kill for a fresh start like this? They're welcome to it, Michelle growled, crossing her arms over her chest. Even through her baggy hoodie, she could feel the unfamiliar weight and softness of her new assets. It was distracting and disturbing. The genie shook his head, expression turning annoyingly patronizing. Look, kiddo, I've been around the block a few millennia. Trust me, the grass isn't always greener. Every life has its ups and downs. Don't kiddo me, Michelle snapped. I'm a grown man! Or at least I was until you zapped me into this funhouse mirror version of myself. Gender change wishes are a dime a dozen. The genie shrugged. Folks always think life will be easier on the other side of the fence. And sometimes it is. But every form has its own challenges and limitations. He leaned forward, fixing her with an earnest look. This experience you're having, it's a rare opportunity. A chance to look at the world and yourself through a whole new lens. Think of all you could learn, all you could teach others. Michelle snorted, unimpressed by the motivational speech. Right, because what the world really needs is one more self-involved starlet. I'll pass, thanks. We'll see. The genie's eyes twinkled knowingly, setting Michelle's teeth on edge. This wish has a way of working out for the best, even if it doesn't seem like it at first. You might be surprised at what you discover about yourself. With that cryptic pronouncement, he vanished in a puff of glittery smoke, leaving Michelle gaping at an empty couch. Typical Genie, dropping some inscrutable wisdom bomb and then flitting off to ruin someone else's day. Michelle flopped back with a groan, throwing an arm over her face. Even that simple action felt alien, her limbs too light and slim, weighed down by her newly abundant chest. Everything about this body was foreign to her. Wrong. How was she supposed to just accept this radical shift in identity? To go out there and play the part of America's sweetheart when inside she still felt like a slightly schlubby guy who worked at Office Depot? She tried to imagine walking a red carpet in a slinky dress and towering heels, fielding inane questions from fawning reporters. Slipping into this carefully constructed persona, vivacious and vulnerable in equal measure, like a snake shedding its skin. Smiling and posing while inside she slowly suffocated, crushed beneath the weight of impossible expectations. The thought alone made her break out in a cold sweat, the way she'd always felt before a big presentation at work, a potent cocktail of dread and inadequacy. Only now, instead of a dozen bored coworkers, she'd have the eyes of the entire world on her, just waiting for her to screw up. No pressure or anything. Michelle pressed the heels of her palms into her eyes until stars sparked behind her lids. Okay, new plan. Maybe instead of busting out the ninja moves, she could pull a Dave Chappelle and just disappear. Hop a flight to some remote, unextraditable country and live out her days in blissful anonymity. God knows she had the funds for it now. A first-class ticket to Thailand was pocket change for an up-and-coming ingenue. She could reinvent herself yet again, but on her own terms this time. Become a beach bum or a Buddhist monk or whatever the female equivalent was. The idea was so tempting, she actually felt herself start to smile before reality came crashing back in. Who was she kidding? Her agent had her on a tighter leash than a junkyard dog. The woman probably had a tracking chip implanted in her at this point, and even if she did manage to pull off an intercontinental vanishing act, then what? Live as a fugitive, constantly looking over her shoulder? Somehow that didn't seem like an improvement over her current predicament. No, the unfortunate truth was, running wasn't an option. Not a viable one anyway. The genie had dumped her in the deep end, and now she had no choice but to sink or swim. Maybe this didn't have to be the catastrophe she was making it out to be. So she'd been hit with a double whammy of physical and social transformation. So what? She was a strong, resourceful person. She'd weathered her share of upheavals, even if nothing quite on this scale before. Surely if she could adjust to a new job or a new apartment, she could adjust to a new body and lifestyle too. It would just take time and patience. And probably a whole lot of research, because Lord knows her current pop culture knowledge was woefully inadequate for the task at hand. With a resolute nod, Michelle heaved herself off the sofa and marched into the bedroom. First things first, she needed to take stock of her assets. And she didn't mean the ones currently straining against her body. She rifled through the walk-in closet until she found a notepad and pen in the depths of an Hermès bag, then settled cross-legged on the bed and began to write. Inventory of stuff I need to learn. ASAP. How to walk in heels without breaking my neck. Names and backgrounds of key players, agent, manager, publicist, stylist, etc. My backstory. Where did I come from? How did I get discovered? Any juicy tidbits the media might seize on? What is this movie I supposedly filmed? Who else is in it? When does it come out? Filmography. What else have I been in? Are any of them on Netflix for emergency cramming sessions? Awards, accolades, if any? Golden Globes? Independent Spirit Awards? Key rivals, frenemies. All remaining essential girl stuff. Hair, makeup, grooming, wardrobe, decorum, etc. The list went on for several more pages, Michelle's neat printing devolving into frantic chicken scratch as she tried to anticipate every possible hole in her knowledge. It was daunting, but also oddly energizing, like studying for a big exam with the highest possible stakes. By the time she capped her pen, a tentative sense of optimism had taken root. She still had no clue how to be a starlet, but at least now she had a roadmap. A daunting, convoluted, woefully incomplete roadmap, but it was something. She glanced at the clock on the nightstand and winced. 2 a.m. She needed to get some shut-eye if she wanted to be even marginally functional for her early call time. But first, a fortifying snack. Changing one's molecular structure really worked up an appetite. As she padded into the gleaming chef's kitchen, Michelle caught a glimpse of herself in the mirrored backsplash and did a double-take. In all the chaos of the day, she'd almost forgotten about her glamorous new exterior. Gone was the nondescript brunette with the slightly crooked nose and tired eyes. In her place was a bona fide bombshell, all tumbling chestnut locks and dangerous curves. Even sleep-mussed and smudged with the vestiges of her mask meltdown, this Michelle was a knockout. For a long moment, she just stared, trying to reconcile that bewitching reflection with her own self-image. It still didn't feel like her face, her body, but maybe with time and effort it could be. She was an actress now, right? Or at least she was going to have to become one if she wanted to survive. Squaring her shoulders, Michelle gave her mirror self a determined nod. She could do this. She had to do this. Scary and surreal as it was, this was her life now, and damn it, she was going to make the most of it. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out Patreon for a lot more content and early access to YouTube videos.